Today we're going to do a few things, but first I'm going to tell you a story. And fair warning, I haven't laughed this hard since the new season of Letterkenny. Last week you saw us run our first gel in the lab, and if you watched that video you'll know that I pointed out something strange. For those of you that missed it, here's a quick recap. This machine lets us use a process called gel electrophoresis, where we put DNA solution into these little holes and then use electricity to pull it through a block of gel made of a material called agarose. When we make a gel, we add a special solution to it called gel stain. This stain sticks to DNA so that when we shine a UV light on the gel, the DNA glows and we can see it as it moves. When we ran the gel, we put some ladder into two of the wells, which is a mixture of DNA strands of known length. This way, we have something to compare our actual test solutions to. Smaller pieces of DNA move through the gel faster, and so the ladder spreads out into bands of known size. Well, last week we used two ladders and two test solutions. The first test solution was the results of the PCR reaction we tried to run, which we discussed in that video. The second was some of the DNA solution that Josiah and the Odin sent us, which was the same DNA that was supposed to be used in the GFP yeast video. When we ran the gel, 3 of the lanes lit up, but in the lane that was supposed to have the GFP DNA in it, there was no glow to be seen. This was really weird, as according to the bottle, there should have been more DNA in that lane than anywhere else, and it should have been the brightest band on the gel. Basically, this means the only thing in there must have been water. This would explain why the yeast transformation protocol didn't work as well. With no DNA to put into the yeast, there's nothing to make them grow or glow. But just to be sure, we ran a second test. This machine is called a nanodrop. It shines a UV light through a tiny droplet of solution, and if any DNA is in there, it'll cause it to glow. The machine then measures how brightly the DNA glows, and from that it can tell how much DNA is in there. When we tested the DNA solution, it came back as completely empty. This means the only thing in that vial was water. So not only was the original order missing a third of the pieces, I was sent water instead of DNA. While I did find this funny, it's both disappointing and insightful. This explains why our PCR reaction didn't work, which should still mean that the primers we designed are good. We just need a source of proper DNA to make it work. To that end, next week we're going to look at the process of DNA extraction. One saving grace of the kit is that it came with some pre-engineered glowing yeast, so we'll extract some of the plasmid out of them for use in our future experiments. Once we have it, we can properly transform it into different yeast and make the full troubleshooting video, and use it in our PCR reactions for the spiderbeer project. So what's my official review at the end of all of this? Well, I can't suggest that anyone buy this kit, that's for sure. While I know some people who've bought it and it worked, the utter lack of attention to detail was just beyond anything I was expecting going in. I've also been testing the other kits I received, and the results have been odd. So once the results of that are more clear, I'll be able to share more and give a more general view. Now though, I'd like to hear from all of you. If you've bought anything from the Odin in the past, comment below with what the results were for you. I'd love to see if this was truly a one-off mishap or if others have had similar experiences. On a more positive note, while I definitely can't suggest the kit, the pre-engineered yeast is a different story. Anyone who follows me on Instagram saw this brewing, which is 5 gallons of glowing pumpkin mead made just in time for our Halloween party. We've called our brew Jack-O-Lantern. To brew this beauty, we heated 5 gallons of distilled water to boiling and threw in 2 kilograms of pumpkin puree, which we'd prepared in advance. If you go to try this, I'd probably go with another kilo or 2 of pumpkin, as the pumpkin flavor was really mild by the end. We then sweetened everything with a kilogram of honey, 500 milliliters of maple syrup, and another 500 grams of cane sugar. We then added a bunch of spices, including nutmeg, cinnamon, cloves, ginger, cayenne, and allowed everything to boil for 20 to 30 minutes. If we do this again, we won't add the spices here, as they're lost by the time the fermentation is done. We only did it this way because we were pressed for time, and we knew we couldn't let the final brew sit and mull with the spices afterwards, as we only had a few weeks till Halloween. Once everything had boiled, we poured it into our strainer barrel made from an old water cooler jug. This way we could remove the pumpkin and bulk spices from the solution. We then used a tube to transfer the liquid into our glass fermentation carboy, which we'd cleaned with fermentation grade cleanser earlier. Then it was capped with an airlock and allowed to cool overnight. The day before, I'd sterilized some sugar water with a bit of malt extract in it, and then inoculated it with pre-engineered glowing yeast. The next day, when the carboy had cooled, I poured in the starter liquid and then capped it and allowed it to ferment for a month. Even a week in, the solution was already glowing bright green when we put a UV light on it, and on the night of Halloween, it looked awesome under the UV lights, and was a great addition to the Halloween party. To prepare for the party, we used a siphon to transfer the finished ferment into our keg, making sure to leave the yeast at the bottom. Added in 1 carton of apple juice and 2 glasses of extra strong spiced tea, then capped it and hooked up the carbonation tube. We left it at 30 psi overnight, then lowered the pressure to 8 psi for serving, and attached it to the beer taps we have built into our fridge. I hope you all had a spooky Halloween, because I sure did. On the one hand, I was haunted by the total lack of glow, and on the other, I've been enjoying the pleasant glow and spicy taste of this fun mead. I really do love the idea of making glowing ferments like this, which is partially why I was so disappointed when the kit didn't work. It's such a simple but fun addition. I think in future episodes, rather than making more green stuff, I think we'll modify the plasmid to be other colors, like reds, blues, purples, and I'd love a whole palette of colorful ferments and strains to play with. Either way, I'll be using colored yeast like this in future brews for sure. Lastly, I'm super excited because the last package of biosupplies arrived with the reagents for the spiderbeer project. First up, this vial of nightmare fuel. And based on the clearly visible hourglass, these are definitely real black widows. I'm just trying to ID the exact species now. Then I've got some enzymes and enzyme mixes for later parts of the project, and the PK-Lac2 plasmid we talked about in the intro video. There was also lots of other fun surprises in this package, like a fresh vial of P. microspora, the plastic-eating fungus. And of course some other fun plasmids, but I'll save the surprise of what those are for future videos. And that's pretty much it, another roller coaster of a week complete. As I said, next week we'll be back to working in the lab, so as always, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to see when I post new videos. If you've missed the last few videos because YouTube didn't send you a notification, I've put links to those in the description along with everything else. And as always, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members who keep these science videos coming. That's all for now, and I'll see you next week.